Welcome to the MSP Owner Podcast, where we delve into the journeys of leaders in the managed service provider industry, uncovering challenges, successes, and insights to help you build, scale, exit your business. Today, I'm talking with Ramsey Sahyoun, co-founder and M&A partner at Evergreen. Evergreen does more than $1 billion in revenue. Evergreen is also more of a holdco model. They're not a one-size-fits-all MSP. They've got a very decentralized ownership approach, which I'm very interested to dive into. And from my understanding, their holding company owns over 100 individual MSP platforms in the space. Very interesting, and something we'll dive into. Ramsey, before he co-founded Evergreen, worked at Alpine Investors, a well-known private equity firm that does a bunch of roll-ups in a whole bunch of different industries. So I'm excited to dive into that as well. So welcome.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to jump into this, given my, I grew up in private equity, like started out my career, and then went into business ownership. Sounds like you went down a similar path to, you did private equity and then, went into a holdco and or ownership sort of mindset and structure. So I guess we have that shared commonality. Where did that start? Did you always think you wanted to build a holdco, or where did this begin?
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't start that early. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I got into golf very young. My grandpa got me into the game, and so but basically until the very end of my time in college at USC, I played on the golf team there. And I got a golf scholarship to go. So it was I was all in on trying to make that my career. And I got
you wanted to be a golf pro.
I did. Yeah. Like Tiger Woods was my hero. And, I was obsessed with the game. And
were you like top in your class in high school? Like you were the best golfer on your team? Like, what was that story?
I was. Yeah. I was like a nationally ranked junior golfer. And then I played all 4 years at USC. We're a pretty good team. We won the conference championship. We would get to kind of the NCAA tournament every year. So it was fun, but very competitive. Like once you get to college, the bar is high, and it's even way higher to actually become a successful professional. So kind of by the end, by the very end of my college career, I decided not to try my hand at being a pro. And that's kind of when I started getting into business, but it wasn't something I was like always preparing for.
What got you there? Like, why did you decide, hey, I'm going down this path, and then you didn't want to? What was that? Was that like?
I just realized I wasn't good enough. I didn't have a good enough college career to justify, taking the risk. And it's just so few people, I think there are 125, 150 people on the PGA Tour that make a really good living. Everyone else is, earning their paycheck every week. And, I just didn't want to take that risk with my career.
Mm. Yeah, that was like junior year. You were like, man, I got to find a career.
No, it was later than that.
It was later than that?
Year. Yeah. Well, it was senior year.
So junior year, were you doing like pro internships? Like you were still doing golf as like your thing?
Yeah, that's right. Like I didn't have any internships over the summers. I would go compete. So I had no internship experience. So as a result, it was my senior year, back half of my senior year. And like, I was about to graduate and I was trying to get internships. So my first, I was lucky to get an internship at like an independent sponsor, kind of, private equity firm would be a generous term. And it was unpaid after graduating college. And they said if I did a good job over the summer that they would start paying me. And did
they end up paying you?
So they did. It took like 4 months instead of 3, but they did. So that was my first experience with private equity. But my boss there like just taught me the whole business, and I fell in love with it right away. This idea that you could buy private companies, I didn't even know that was a thing.
What was the independent sponsor called?
It was a company called Revolution Capital Group. The two partners there have since split and created their own separate firms, but they were based in Los Angeles.
What did you like about, like, what opened your eyes to the model specifically?
Yeah. So my role was basically cold calling business owners and bankers. And I guess I think what I liked about it was it really gives you an appreciation for just how vast the economy is and like all the different types of businesses out there and how you can, make really great investments by just finding things just by uncovering things that people aren't looking for. When you think finance, usually you think like stock picking and investing, and I liked that you could win by like going to the far corners of the earth to find really niche.
So like uncovering opportunities.
That's what I loved
the
about
exciting
it.
part.
Yeah. Uncovering opportunities that are off the radar.
And did you like the like discovery, like private equity's got a few different functions, right? You got to find the business, you got to close the business, and then you got to operate the business. Which one did you like the best? Or it sounds like you had more exposure on the finding aspect given your role responsibilities.
Definitely the finding. And maybe when we get to my time at Alpine, I got some experience on the investing side when I was there, because that's kind of what everybody is chasing. And you're told when you kind of go out of college, when you get out of college, you do banking and then you go to the investing side of private equity. So I got some exposure to that, but I came back to the sourcing, the finding side of the business. I just really love that because I think it adds so much value in this area of small business M&A specifically.
That's really interesting. I had a similar experience at the second private equity firm I looked at. They basically said they wanted to spend their time focused on talking to the big shot bankers because they wanted to do bigger deals. And then they're like, here's 3,500 brokers. Go call them and then go find these small deals that we'll just pass on automatically anyway. That was like where I cut my teeth in the small business, arena too.
Yeah, look, I think the big insight that Alpine had, and we're kind of a part of that insight, and that we did it in a very specific industry. But Alpine as a whole, I think the insight they had is that you can actually scale your firm without necessarily doing big deals. You can scale those efforts with the 3,500 brokers that you talked about, and just do it at a high velocity, and you can successfully raise and deploy multi-billion-dollar funds with that strategy. I think that's really, really key insight that they've had that has kind of driven the success.
What are people missing, right? Like, because I feel like there's this idea out there that acquiring fails half the time, mergers fail half the time. There's preconceived notions. Then you have firms like Evergreen that can go out and acquire 100+ companies and not blow things up. So like, what do you think what's the difference between those two? Or is it just a scale thing? Is it a focus thing? Or is it what is it?
Yeah, man, it's probably not just one thing, because I always hear the stats about whatever, most M&A fails or something, and I just don't know. Like, I sometimes I question the validity of that, because I do think a lot of strategic, transformative M&A fails, but I think M&A, like anything else, is a skill that you get better at with reps. And so I think if you look at very acquisitive companies like Constellation Software and TransDigm and Danaher and all these companies that like we've admired for a long time, like their M&A is wildly successful, and they do it over and over and over again, and they probably get better as they go. And I think having that attitude towards it, I guess that's what I think. And then I do think it's everything. Like you have to invest in your sourcing function. I think a lot of private equity firms are afraid to kind of do that and do the do the dirty work. They just kind of want to talk to bankers and be comfortable.
Yeah.
And then you got to know how to diligence these businesses, and then you got to know how to create value once you buy the companies. I think it's all in the details of being great at each stage.
If you could only choose one aspect to be excellent at, what stage would you choose? The finding, the closing, or the operating?
Oh man.
And the rest, you're just mediocre. The rest, you're just mediocre.
Yeah. I'm biased. I would probably say finding, and just because I feel like, you can do good deals and de-risk all the rest of the components. I think that is changing. Like if you ask me in 5 years, I might say operating, just because as the industry gets more competitive, you won't be able to just win on the buy as much, and you'll need to be excellent at creating value post close. So I would say operating would be a close second, and probably will overtake finding in the future.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. That's the MSP owner's biggest challenge too, is finding new business too. And also It's the hardest thing. So if you're good at that, everything else becomes, a moot point. So
that's right.
Hi, I'm Ben Tigelaar, the host of MSP Owner Podcast and the CEO of DataTel, an IT managed service provider with 35 employees. The mission of this podcast is simple: to have authentic conversations with IT owners about their journey, how it started, the challenges they've faced, and where they're going next. Every episode, I personally walk away with a new actionable item to strengthen my own business. But a quick word about my company, DataTel. We are actively acquiring MSPs who align with our service and culture. So if your company is generating between $1 and $10 million of revenue, I want to talk to you. But wait, you're probably thinking, why me and why DataTel? First is, I get you. I understand the challenges MSP owners face, being one myself, feeling overworked, overwhelmed, constantly being on call, struggling to bring in new business. I have the solutions and people in place to address these pain points. Second is culture. We run our business on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which has been transformative for our employees and clients alike. I believe that building a great company comes down to finding and retaining great people who are in the right seats. Everything else is noise. If any of this resonates, it probably means we're a fit and we should be having a conversation. Until then, let's get back to the show. What do you view yourself as? Like you in your position where you're at right now? Do you view yourself as an MSP owner, a private equity investor, an operator? Like how would you define what you are right now?
Oh man. That's a good question. I've never really thought of that. I view myself as a partner at a holding company. I think I'm closer. My day-to-day is closer to what someone working at a private equity firm looks like. I think we're a little bit closer to our operating companies just by nature of how the organization is set up. But that's kind of how I see myself.
Got it. I always thought of true independent sponsors, true people who are having holding companies. Really, they're owning a small percent of a large company, and right. The role that you do is mostly acquisitions. You're at the partner level. You're not doing the individual operating at the individual companies, but but I still view you as an MSP owner. Right. You're just a different nature of one, and your motivations and focus are going to be different than a lot of others. So that's why I wanted to have you on this, because I feel like there's an intersection there. You have some unique things that I think we can pull on and have some fun with. So just going back to your early career. So you had you went to college at USC, you worked for this independent sponsor, and then you went and got an MBA and then went to Alpine, or what was the path there?
No MBA. I studied USC as an undergrad business school, so I studied business
Got it.
in undergrad. I majored in it. And then, so no, it was independent sponsor for a year after college. And then I got the opportunity at Alpine right after that. I just found it on like Indeed and I applied. Alpine was building out at that time. This was 2014, 2015. And I was the second person Alpine hired when they were building out their dedicated sourcing function. So prior to that, sourcing, investing, and operations were kind of intermingled, and they were building out dedicated sourcing, which at the time I think they were on the earlier end of private equity firms building out dedicated deal origination.
Got it.
10 years ago.
So you were at the beginning stages of Alpine becoming Alpine, what I understand it to be today.
That's right.
From a BD and sourcing perspective.
Right. Yeah. Alpine was very, very different then. Like I think the year I joined, they did 3 or 5 deals, and they didn't do add-ons for the most part. Maybe they did, add-ons for some of their platforms some of the time.
So what changed going from that approach to the let's focus on these smaller add-ons approach?
Yeah,
at the company.
I think so. Constellation Software was an inspiration on the software side, and Alpine Software Group was created, a little bit before Evergreen was created. And I think those two strategies were kind of the early aggregators, if you will. So focusing on smaller businesses and doing them at a higher velocity. And then I think building out the sourcing engine, was critical, because then we, it was kind of just banker coverage sourcing. And then we built out, when we started Evergreen, I kind of built out a direct to business owner sourcing engine. And, that's been deployed across all the Alpine aggregators at this point.
Gotcha. And so you worked at Alpine for how long?
I worked at Alpine for 3 years prior to starting Evergreen.
Okay. And then near the end of it, it seemed like you guys had, like, what was going on at the company? Because I assume that this organically turned into an opportunity that you discovered and wanted to, go into. So how did that go from you're focused on just building a company to like, maybe there's something else, a tangent here?
Yeah. So Alpine Software Group was being created to focus on these smaller software companies. And the initial thought for Evergreen was to be the services version of that. So to aggregate smaller services companies. And Alpine, so we came to Alpine with that pitch, like the services aggregator. And then the Alpine's push was, hey, focus in on an industry. And so we started exploring various industries. We looked at IT services as an overall category, and generally Alpine had passed on all IT services companies because they were project-based and non-recurring. But we kind of zoomed in, and we found this SMB managed services part of the market that has recurring revenue. That became in kind of late 2017. It was like, okay, we want to start Evergreen, and we want to start it by acquiring MSPs. So that's kind of how it evolved from kind of small services company aggregator to, focusing on MSPs. And then today we've gotten into a few other segments of IT services, but it's been all IT focused.
But for you personally, when you're sitting at the company, are you like naturally leading this, and then you're just like the natural person to come in to lead this company, or how does that happen?
Yeah. So Jeff Totten, who I co-founded the business with, he and I made a trip to Omaha in 2017 for the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting.
I love Warren.
That was the inspiration. We were like, we got to build a holding company. And I think the timing lined up well with what Alpine was doing with Alpine Software Group. And so it was basically at that point, like, the annual meeting in Omaha is like in May, like late April, early May, 2017. That's when we got the idea. And it just, again, the timing kind of worked out with where Alpine was was heading. So it we kind of pitched it, and it was off to the races at that point. There was a point at which we kind of had to make the decision. Do you want to stay in a private equity firm like Alpine, and there's kind of a more defined path there, or do you want to take this bet on starting a strategy? And we ultimately took the bet on starting the strategy, so that there was kind of a decision point there that I remember pretty vividly, like just a fork in the road in your career.
Did you negotiate the structure of the deal up front, or you just started working on it and said, "Hey, we'll figure this out later"? For you personally,
I don't remember. We really just started working on it and trusted that the incentives and everything would work out in the end. And I think Alpine's backed a bunch of CEOs and management teams, so you kind of knew what it was going to be going in. So yeah, we didn't really focus on that. We were fortunate we got to just focus on running after building the company.
That's awesome. So maybe start with high level with Evergreen as a company, and when you say holding company, it's interesting because I think some people might look at it and say, "Oh, you're a big MSP," and then you think of yourself as a holdco owner. So can you just talk a little bit about that decentralization and what that means for you and then for your portfolio companies?
Totally, yeah. So if you look at Evergreen today, there's Evergreen, the holding company, which is based in San Francisco. We've got 40 people at the Evergreen holding company. The majority of those folks are focused on sourcing and executing acquisitions. And then underneath that, we have three what we call groves. We have our MSP business, which is called Lyra, and underneath that, you have all the MSPs that we own. And then we have two other groves, one called Pine that's focused on ERP implementation and consulting firms, and then another called Cedar that's focused on IT for governments, state and local and federal government agencies. So those are kind of the three categories. So that's part of why I think of this as more of a holding company that's focused on technology services businesses versus an MSP roll-up. And then I think the other thing like that you called out is just the decentralized operating model. Like the companies that Berkshire was the initial inspiration to start Evergreen, but also companies like Constellation Software that I think they have over 1,000 independently operated vertical software companies. TransDigm has 100 aerospace component businesses that are operated on a decentralized basis. So that's what we see ourselves building, just in technology services. So that's why I think of it that way. And like you said, we probably have about 100 different P&Ls, and each of those businesses has a CEO and a management team that's incentivized and accountable to drive that business forward. And we have a deep-seated belief that works better than trying to mash it all together into a single brand.
How do you align the incentives from a pretty decentralized approach where one company might be growing at 50 or 100% a year, and then another one is losing 10% a year? And how do you reconcile those differences between at the individual company level and then at the holding company level? Is there a mixture of two, or how does that work in reality?
Definitely. Yeah. Great question. So, I believe you have to have very different incentives depending on where in the organization someone is. Like I think incentivizing somebody running $1 million EBITDA MSP on the overall Evergreen M&A activity doesn't make a lot of sense. Like we those people can co-invest and buy shares in the company, but we have a really interesting kind of incentive program for operating company leaders that's all focused around their business and the performance of their business. So and basically the gist of it, I won't get into the details of the plan, but the gist is, we want folks, doubling their business organically over a 5-year period. And if they do that, they're richly rewarded for doing that, because that's great operating performance, I think, in this industry, to grow the bottom line at a 15% compound annual growth rate over 5 years. So that's kind of what our incentive plan is oriented around, and can create really exciting outcomes for the individuals leading the single operating company.
Got it. So it's an individualized approach, but then hopefully 5 years from now, the overall company is worth more as well. And then you get some, because I think of the idea of joining a bigger MSP is like you get to ride on the enterprise value increase with it being larger, and like you're de-risking yourself. And
totally.
So it sounds like you're trying to attempt to get best benefits of both.
Yeah. So, I think that what you bring up the kind of the concept of rollover equity. So a lot of people sell their business and they roll equity into Evergreen. So that's a big part of it too. What I'm talking about is kind of the long-term incentive plan that we have with the individual operating company leaders, many of which aren't founders, oftentimes founders selling to us because they want to transition out, and we put in someone to run the company. That's kind of when we put in that incentive package.
Got it. I'm curious, like in this journey, what do you think about like the last, 8-9 years as like you have inflection points, or like what were the inflection points in your mind? Because you're at 100 platform companies in 3 different verticals, and like what if you're to like break it into chunks, like maybe like the first chunk is like you think you have something. What was that?
That first year we bought our first MSP, December 31st, 2017, a company called Wolf Consulting. So that first year of 2018 was it was definitely like we have something here, like this industry is great, and we feel like we got the thesis right.
And how did you know it was great though?
We knew it was great from an M&A. We knew it was great from an M&A standpoint. I think that was the biggest thing. Like we were having a lot of success sourcing acquisition opportunities. The valuations were reasonable. I think we were early to it. It wasn't particularly competitive at that time to acquire MSPs, and we ran after it like hard. Like we moved with conviction, which in hindsight was good. And I wish we would have moved with more. Because the industry got more competitive quickly. We knew it was good from an M&A standpoint. We had some challenging, and I guess so there was that. I guess phase 2 would be like we learned some challenging lessons in those early couple years. Probably the most powerful one was we tried kind of integrating some smaller businesses into kind of a regional platform that we had acquired, and it really struggled. And so we always had that belief in the decentralized operating model, but we were open-minded. That experience like really reaffirmed that, because the companies that we were operating on a decentralized basis were crushing it, and we had we had some challenging ones where we were trying to put these businesses together, and it just reaffirmed our strategy. So I think the second phase was like, okay, now we know what works, and we know kind of what we are and what we're trying to build, and we're going to really own that. And then I think the third stage would probably be just building out the team. It was me, Jeff, and for like the first 6 months, and then we kind of slowly built the team, to now the 40 folks at the Evergreen holding company. And, that it's been much more about scaling and, finding other like-minded folks to bring onto the team. So I think that would probably be kind of the third phase.
Yeah. So phase two, when you realized, hey, you had some challenging lessons with integrating is hard. What
Yeah.
do you still have that view that like it sounds like you don't do very many add-ons for your existing portfolio companies too. You had some,
Yeah.
Very few, right?
Yeah. Very, very few. We do it a little bit. So we have a couple deals under LOI right now that are tuck-in types, but
And
yeah,
why do
it's
you
not
think
our
it's
main
so
focus.
challenging? Because in other industries, right, I look at dental, I see consolidated branding and structure. I see, HVAC, consolidated branding and structure. And then,
Yeah.
but I was also in healthcare. So there was also the flip. There was also holding companies that had very regionalized or even local.
Right.
Dr. X was owned by private equity. So there's varying degrees of it. But I'm curious, why do you feel like it's so hard, particularly in this space?
Yeah. It's a good question, and I don't believe that it can never work. Like I'm not one of those people where it's like if someone tells me about their roll up strategy and they want to integrate companies, I'm like, oh, you have no chance. Like I think there are plenty of successful examples of people doing it. I think our strategy is different, and I think we own it, and I think that's part of why it works, because we kind of built the whole organization around it. But I do think that this space is particularly challenging for an integrated kind of roll up model, and I think it comes down to like the churn that tends to arise out of integrating tool stacks. And I think when integration leads to a worse experience for the customer and lower service levels, which it almost always does, that is kind of the core driver of this business. And there aren't really economies of scale that are powerful enough, in my opinion, to overcome that churn. And I think that's why most roll-ups struggle to grow organically, because they have churn coming out of the acquisitions. They don't have maybe enough of a new logo acquisition engine, like you said earlier in the show. Like new customer acquisition is one of the hardest things for MSPs. So what does that mean? If you churn, you're gonna have a heck of a time growing organically. And I just think that's a lot of what drives.
So you're saying you would rather
challenges.
have change in leadership over change in infrastructure. So you'd rather replace a leader who's leaving the company, right? And a founder owner who's been with the business for 20 years. You would rather change that person completely versus having to go through the integration process between two different, service models.
That's right. Yeah, because I think what happens is like the rest of the team is staying in place, the brand is staying in place, that the customer relationship is the same the day before we buy the company as the day after. You're talking to if you're a customer, you're talking to the same people that you talked to before. So we tend to buy, I think, larger MSPs. I think our average MSP acquisition is 7 or 8 million of revenue. So these are businesses where the founders are not
always doing the things.
Companies. Yeah, exactly. They don't have customer relationships necessarily. They handed that off to account management. So, I think our strategy works really well for those types of businesses. I think if you're looking smaller than that, I think it can, maybe an integrated model can make more sense.
And as you look at like other industries, even other portfolio other holdcos within within the network, what do you do other people have differing views like as it relates to other industries, or is that shared commonality where everyone within the private equity group is saying we like the decentralized model? Like, is that core to is that core or not really?
It's no, I think it you mean across like the Alpine companies?
Across Alpine as a broad across all these industries.
Yeah. I think at Evergreen we probably skew the most like we're the most hardcore about it. And
I mean, the only thing that you're integrating,
everything.
right, is ERP financials. That
That's
was
right.
my understanding. And
That's
everything else is decentralized.
Everything else is decentralized.
Do you have companies like some companies are running on EOS, some running on scaling up, some not doing anything, like from a framework perspective?
Yeah, it so happens that most of them run on EOS. It's remarkable how kind of ubiquitous that operating system has become in small businesses generally. A lot of people use that, but not all. I think I do think that there is that the belief in decentralization persists at various levels across to varying degrees across the different Alpine companies. I think the big thing that is common for across all of them is developing a value creation playbook and strategy. Like what I think is so much more important than integrating a tool stack is that you come in with a playbook to create value in each business you acquire, and you have a plan against which you go and execute. And when you do the deals over and over again in the same industry, I think you get really good at that. And so that is that's something we believe in, because ultimately, like, we're not running a decentralized business just because like we're nice and it feels good. Like we
it's less work. It's less work for you, right?
We think it leads to better financial results in the companies, and we think it leads to better better service to the customers.
And really, the idea around that too is like, okay, you have enough portfolio companies, you have enough diversity. Now you're representing IT services more broadly, and individually, right? It's not as important. Like you're building Holdco for a reason, right? Like you want scale and diversity.
Yeah, we want scale and diversity. I mean, I think that is that's a benefit. I wouldn't say that's like why we're building the company. I think like the why we're building a company for me is because I do believe, I have a belief that this kind of model is better for most business owners in this industry, particularly business owners of scale. And I want to spread that as much as I can, and we also we want to build a big important company that makes an impact. So that's kind of what drives us.
Nice,
more so than like diversification necessarily.
So acquisitions. I'm curious about. I mean, you've done this a lot of times. You've got a model. You've got a playbook. Can you tell us how you approach acquisitions platforms?
Yeah. So it starts on the sourcing side. So like building out, like doing a lot of research. We have a database of like 15,000 MSPs that's been built over a long period of time. And I think that part of it is really important because I think what you want to do with acquisitions is first, like, give yourself options. Like what I find with a lot of people that do M&A is like they find, they kind of work on the first one or two deals that come and you don't really kind of get a view of like what the options are. And I think that, that can lead to failure. So that's like step one, is like give yourself options, and there's no shortcut to doing that. You just gotta do a lot of research, do a lot of outreach, get rejected a lot of times, talk to a lot of people. And then once you talk to someone, I think having a differentiated message is important. So we spend a lot of time into doing that and finding, we get on the phone with the business owner, like, what are they going to remember after that call? So I think that whole part is kind of the first step. And then, we have a process that we go through. So you have the first call, you get an NDA, you review financials, there's a financial call, and then there's a letter of intent. So we try to get to that point in the process pretty quickly, like within a matter of weeks. And then there's a due diligence process post LOI that's like 60 days. And then we close. And it goes, and the focus is on, operating the business from there. And then, during the due diligence process, the value creation strategy, putting that together, what are we going to do to double this business over 5 years? Like specifically, like, what are we going to do on pricing? What are we going to do on new logo acquisition? What are we going to do on, on the procurement side? What's our strategy here? I think that's a critical part of diligence and then translating that into the operating side.
Is part of the fit here that if you go down the value creation strategy and you can't really find one, then you pass?
Yeah. I think we've got, you don't want to do that post LOI. So you need to go in with like a belief I think an example of that is we see a lot of businesses with really, really high EBITDA margins because the founder is doing 4 different roles in the company. That's a good example if you pass on that, because how do you create, that is very tough. You get a business starting at 30% EBITDA margins. Like, what are you going to do? Take it to 40? Like, no, chances are you're going to take it down to 20 and you're going to lose your shirt on that investment. So that's kind of how, an example where you're talking about there, where there's not really a path to value creation.
And I guess if you're focused on buying businesses that are $6+ million in revenue, that usually have a lot of structure and stuff in place that would prevent that from happening most of the times. Like they have to have a salesperson. They have to have, most of the time, or no? Do you see that less frequently?
Yeah. I would say most of the time we see that. There's usually an area, and it usually is on the sales side, where the owner is still kind of the main driver there. Maybe they have a salesperson, but maybe it's not. If you look at who's winning the deals, it's the owner. Maybe the owner needs to be there to close the deals. So oftentimes that's where we're finding we're having to make an investment. The nice part about that is if you get it right, like that, it's related to revenue. It drives revenue. I think if you have to make investments because the team is way understaffed, like that's really challenging, because that's like pure cost without a revenue generating component.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the biggest mistakes that MSP owners make when either selling or building their company?
Let's see, selling or building their company. I'm
thinking like, man, if I focused in a particular industry, if I niched down, if I built a repeatable sales function, if I, wouldn't have skimped on doing these things the last 3 years, right? Like, what are the things that are the biggest regrets that people have when they come to the table and they try to sell? And I'm sure everyone has some that they're like, I wish I could have done this better.
Yeah, I think there is probably, I think it comes down to a growth engine or a sales engine and really focusing on growth. I feel like most MSPs focus so much on the tech stack and the service and that stuff, it's really important and it's the foundation of the business. But I think most MSPs have a lot of scar tissue from like trying to hire a salesperson and it doesn't work, and then you try again and it doesn't work, and they built a nice business where they don't have to do that. I think that's probably what I would say is like a focus on growth and adding new customers. And I would encourage most folks to let go a little bit on the operations and tech stack side and focus on growing the company and adding new customers. I think that's a thing that almost nobody does to enough of a degree.
And I would guess, this is a total guess, but people probably focus more on sales than on marketing. at least at this size.
Definitely. 100%.
And why? And is there value in investing in marketing before that? Like, are you seeing the winners invest in sales and marketing, only sales, only marketing, like the ones who are, achieving that top 10%?
Yeah. I think the ones that are doing it at scale, marketing is definitely a component of it. If I think about even our companies, the ones with the kind of slickest branding and marketing, even though they may be actually some of our companies I think are understaffed on sales, but are still growing at scale. And I think that is driven by marketing, a combination of marketing and verticalization, which I think makes your marketing more effective. So I definitely think that's a component of it. I think that's a good point. But I do think you kind of have to have both. And in most of our 5 or 6 million revenue MSPs, you need to start by having a person at the company focused on adding new logos. Like that's oftentimes we're going from 0 to 1 on that.
That seems pretty common. Yeah, I see anything under 3 million, like you have just really immature sales and marketing as a whole. And then you start to figure out between 3 and 6 is like you need to invest. You probably have some people. You're probably making some mistakes. You're figuring out where you're going to be. And then the people above 6 probably look a little bit more professional. They have their stuff going on there, and I think the challenge for people is like when you're under that $5 million range, right? Or you're under 4, an owner is having to do all these things. And it's really challenging to, once you finally start making money after 8 years of building your business, I'm going to go and hire some salespeople who don't deliver like that.
Right.
That would kill me.
Totally. And in the short term, if you're just looking at your EBITDA, it devalues your business, right? And so I think that's the other hesitation for folks, particularly folks that are getting closer to exiting, is like, am I really going to reduce my profitability and therefore the value of my business temporarily because I believe that this is going to pay off? So I think you really have to go into it with whatever 3 to 5 year time horizon on, I'm going to make this work. And I think the payoff at the end can be huge if you execute. But it can be painful if you don't. You're making less money and, you don't build the value that you thought you were going to build, and you're kind of back to square one, and you still have a valuable company at that point, but it's just, you didn't hit the home run you thought you were going to hit.
So if you were an owner, would you be focused on consistent profitability, or would you be focused on some other metric like recurring revenue or overall revenue, or like what a overall gross profit dollars? Like if you were to pick one metric to look at that really, really mattered if you're trying to maximize your outcome at the end, what would you do?
Yeah, I would definitely focus on consistent profitability first. Like I would try to achieve best in class EBITDA margins. I would, and I would focus on, I would see like how far could I take it with owner led sales at really healthy EBITDA margins. But I would be looking ahead, if I'm 3 million of revenue and I want to grow 20%, how am I going to add that revenue? Can I do that? Do I need to start thinking about, I would start thinking 1 year ahead as far as what revenue I need to add and who, and as a result, who do I need to bring on to do it, and make that investment in the growth engine at the right time. I think doing that before you get good profitability can be tough, because then you just don't even know if your services are being delivered profitably, and layering a growth engine on top of that is like, it's just less clear whether that ROI is going to make sense. So I'd focus on profitability first, see how far you can take it. If you get that right, then don't be afraid to pull like the sales and marketing lever to try to get to the next level.
As I think about Evergreen, what's to what do you think are the biggest roadblocks or threats from taking you from $1 billion to $2 billion over the next 5 years?
Yeah, good question. I think it's always it's always the operating performance of the companies that's been really strong so far. But if that turns and we don't continue to grow organically,
but over 100 companies, like you kind of have confidence, right? Or it's more market driven.
So I think industry disruption would be the thing. Like, and that's what
does that look like if there is a disruption? Like, what do you envision?
Yeah, I think AI is obviously super top of mind, and you can paint both a glorious picture of how great it's going to be for the MSP industry, and you can paint a disruptive picture where it disrupts the MSP industry. And I don't know, you don't know, I don't think anybody knows, right? And I think that what we can do is try to navigate that as best we can. And I have some thoughts on that, but I'm very curious because I think about that with our business. I think about like, man, could AI run my company better than I can on a daily basis? I own my company remote. And so, I've thought about, man, could I just plug in my methodology, my mindset, like remove my individual emotions for making bad decisions, and then, have it put up video? Like, would that be a better company than what I could run? More consistent, right?
Works 24 hours a day, like knows what I'm like, I see my job getting replaced.
Right. Yeah, we have a guy on our team. He's like, AI seems to be coming for all the jobs that like people want, and I just want AI to do my laundry. And it's like it is kind of true. A lot of these knowledge work, type jobs are kind of what AI has been built for. So, but yeah, I think it's going to drive a lot of change. My view on it is that MSPs need to be trusted technology advisors that are on their front foot with helping their customers leverage AI to drive business outcomes. And the MSPs that are going to be left behind are the ones that think their job is to fix computers and close tickets, right? Like that, I think that is going to be less a core part of the MSP value proposition, and it's going to be more about consulting. And the consulting is what's going to drive customer value. So that's my
so greater importance on the customer relationship and what they feel they're being delivered to help them solve problems.
That's right. And on the account management, I think that account management, like who's having those conversations with the customer. I think that's a critical part of it. And are they genuinely curious about the business of their customer and how they can add value through technology?
Yep, agreed. If you think back to you've had great acquisitions, and I'm sure you've had bad acquisitions. Yeah. Can you talk about one that you thought was a bad acquisition, and why did that fail, go sideways? What was the challenge around that?
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I think the biggest one was the where we tried to do more of a roll-up strategy. So we've kind of talked about that. One other one was we bought a business that had concentrated non-recurring revenue, and it was in the year of sale. They'd done a few projects for a couple customers, and it didn't repeat itself. After in the years after we bought the company, and so we learned a lesson that way. That company's actually gone on to do really well, but it was a tough 2 or 3 years when you were kind of outrunning that. So, we learned a lesson around just sticking with it, but also, those hard lessons around sometimes projects can drive temporary profitability. And if you buy off of that, you're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And then the best ones, like the outstanding ones, what did they do special or unique and what made them grow? I assume you're thinking about one that has grown X amount per year. What does that look like? What does the absolute best or absolute top three look like?
Yeah. So our first company that we acquired, Wolf Consulting, I think has performed incredibly well. I think it still has set the highest bar. We have some others that are doing great.
Your first one being your best.
Got in for
wow.
them. Yeah. I think, and I think it's like anything. It's never one thing. Like that company and the other companies that have done well. It's like they get all the details right. They're disciplined in they have a predictable growth engine in place. They're disciplined on pricing. They have really happy customers. Like I just think all the details of the business are really good. And I think that is what I feel like the best leaders also are just very like detail oriented in a lot of these businesses. Because there are just so many things that you gotta get right. So I don't think it's
so.
One
is that
thing.
one really driven more by the leadership that was in place, or is it the business model or end market focus?
I think it wasn't just the leadership; it was the whole company. Like the founder Lloyd Wolf, very detail oriented, ran a tremendous business. He's actually an EOS implementer now, so he's very like structured business builder, and I think that was a great foundation. Elliot came in to run that business after Lloyd retired. He now runs he kind of oversees our MSP portfolio. And what he brought was more of the like growth engine. Like we bought that business at 6 million of revenue, and he was kind of the catalyst, I think, to build the growth engine to keep growing it at 20% a year on a bigger and bigger
Wolf
base.
Consulting itself is probably doing 40 to 50 million at least of revenue.
No, not that much. We've done no acquisitions.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It's probably like 3x in revenue organically.
Got it.
Just about. Since we bought the business.
Got it. Because it's only been 8 or 9
profitabilities.
years and 15% growth. Got it. 20%
Yeah, it's
growth.
been 7. Yeah, we bought it December 31st, 2017.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome. So really the best, your best one is actually only growing at 15 or 20% a year. You don't have any, do you have any portfolio companies that are growing like 100% a year, or that's just, you're not seeing that? Like massive growth.
Not organically.
More massive growth.
Right. Not organically.
Got it.
And we have,
I was just curious about like the distribution of companies, right, within the portfolio, and like, what does great look like? What does bad look like? And then it's like, so it sounds like the distribution's pretty tight. You don't have like a bunch of really, really high return, high growth ones. And I guess you don't have a ton of low growth ones, but
I think that's probably right.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think it's also, it is, there's also top line growth, which I think is more distributed, is probably more consistent. And then there's the bottom line. Because like sometimes you have businesses that are going through an investment period in their business, and you have others that are coming out of an investment period, and you really see a lot of EBITDA growth. So I think it's important to kind of maybe distinguish between those two metrics too. And look, I mean, if you're growing a business just in the double digits on the top line and just
that's
operating
good.
leverage and operating leverage, you can grow these businesses 10% on the top and 20% on the bottom, right? Like with operating leverage, like you can expand margins just because your operating expenses don't have to scale with your revenue.
Man, don't tell my management team where our growth ambitions are higher than that. I'm like, oh man, maybe I should take up the gas.
Yeah. Investment, you have phases of investment and not, but I think generally you can grow earnings faster than revenue over time. And I think you should. So
agreed.
Yeah.
What else anything else that's top of mind that you think we should talk about?
No, I don't think so. This has been great.
Cool. Well, appreciate your time, and very interesting to hear about Evergreen and doing over $1 billion in a decentralized model. I mean, it's really, really impressive, unique, and having started out acquiring just one company at $6 million revenue and being where you're at is a testament to you. So congrats, man, so far on what you've done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was fun conversation, and it's been fun building this business. But all credit to our team and the people that have chosen to partner with us. That's what this business has been built on. So I'm just grateful for them.
Thanks.